Hey Jude, long time no see.
Hey.
All right, we're going to give folks a minute or two to get on board and then we'll jump in today. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Was it a good CMAG meeting last night?
Um, it was yes, interesting. There was a lot of people who brought in
Good.
projects. We got to look at people's projects, and I heard that you were one of the last people that kind of you were like the last one that I went to. Mary was the person kind of, gently tearing apart people's projects. And I heard that you had been a person in
Back
previous
when I was,
past to do
yeah,
that.
when I was president. Yep. Yeah, we started those back up again while I was president, and so basically, for the folks that don't know what we're talking about, CMAG is the Creative Metal Arts Guild of Portland, which is our local metals guild. And I was a president for 2 years, and we do all kinds of exciting programming once a month and get-togethers, and we put on a big craft show that you guys have heard me talk about on other sessions. And this month's session was sort of a team critique where we all sat around and critique each other's work. I couldn't make it because I had other things I had to get done last night, but it is always cool. We usually split it up into a gentle group and a more academic, like I need my technical skills evaluated kind of group. And you get really good feedback from a whole bunch of different people, and you have to take some of it with a grain of salt. And but you learn a lot both about your work and other people's work, so it's kind of a neat experience. Um, all right, Helen and Renee and Nancy. My mother was trying to log in earlier, so we may see her again. How are you doing, Nancy?
I'm doing all
Oop,
right. Glad to be here. Hi, Rachel.
good, good, good.
Everyone.
Um, so I have been a busy camper since last we met. What time is it? Yeah, let's give people a couple more minutes before we really dig in. But I got all kinds of things to show you today, both in flight and for us to demo. But while we wait for that, does anybody have anything that they particularly either want to show off because they're proud of it, or that they're stuck on from their box of unfinished things and they want to get a little feedback? Anyone?
I have something.
Okay, let me put you on spotlight. Spotlight for everyone. There you go.
So I experimented with um this. Oh, it's hard to see.
Yep,
So
it's
I took
Kimbo or
yeah, it's well, I did a whole bunch of things. So I took
okay.
some sterling silver and then I tried my first like opened band.
Hmm.
And then I did it in 20 gauge and then um I shaped it and then I kind of depletion gilded it, put some dust. I'd use dirty sterling dust that just in my
Yep,
scraps. And then I depletion gilded that. And then I fused some silver. You can see some of the silver bits. So I fused
yep,
some silver bits onto that. And then after I did that, I did my first 3D trying Kumbu on a 3D surface. And it was almost
yep,
kind of like I don't know, you know how people do lamp work and they have the torch kind of on the side. It was very
yeah,
similar to that process. I will say it's very, very tricky to not
yep,
get it to stick and then go down where you want it and not burn it. Um,
yeah,
but my problem was that I used 20 gauge and I don't know if you can see it, but there's one part of it that's way thinner. This side is way thinner than this side. And
hmm,
I'm really thinking I maybe should have used 18 gauge because
at least.
when I did the fusing it really went in the interior. You can't really see it
Mm,
'cause it's blackened now, but it was really rough in the interior and I had to almost take it down And that's I thinned it out too much because I had to really take it down because of the, just the craggliness of everything. It was almost like it was
Yeah.
reticulated a lot. So that's my question is like, how do I just use a thicker gauge to try to get away from that? Because a lot of people when they do this, the dusting, they don't depletion gild it, but I find that a lot of my dust falls off. So I like to try to do
Hmm.
a little bit of depletion gilding. Like I did maybe 3 or 4 rounds so that it
Yeah.
stuck better. I noticed that it was just an
So,
observation that I
yeah.
made. It stuck better.
You,
But then when I fused it, I really think I went too much.
so there's a whole boatload of things that you aggregated into your challenge there. So
Yeah, I
let's
know.
take a few pieces apart in that, all right? So the first thing is if it's a ring, I would absolutely, if it's an open band ring, I'd absolutely go up to at least 18 gauge,
Okay.
maybe even 16 gauge, because that's a lot of flex action for 22 gauge. It's going to eventually break. The
It was
next thing
20. It was
is
20, but yes,
it's
okay.
20. Okay. Um, uh, the next thing I would worry about is you said you used dirty dust. At the very
It-
least, I would be doing some rinse on the dust to separate because it's usually going to be grindings in there, like
yeah.
ceramic bits, diamond bit, burr bits, all the stuff you've been working with. So make sure that you just put it in a like in a clean bowl of water and just do a little jiggle, 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 and all the dirt that's light enough will come to the surface. And then you can take a paper towel and just kind of blot on top of that to get rid of it because you know the silver is weighty enough that it's going to sink. So that is
Okay.
a starting point. You can also do some really careful pickling of it. Doesn't hurt to pickle your sand. It's just, I mean, your dust. It's just that you have to be careful about how you then sift it back out. So again, you're sort of pouring it into some paper towels with a rinse, So I would be doing it in like a tiny little baby food jar with just a little tiny bit of pickle. Hey, Carmen, good to see you. Um, and then I would rinse it in the same jar. Like I wouldn't do that in my pickle pot. I would do it all in a little tiny offside thing. Get it
Okay.
nice and clean. That's going to improve your surface area and your connection. So that's one of the things. The subsequent action that you took, the other thing is you can always just grind your own from fine silver, right? You take a piece of fine silver and just put it under a little cap while you're grinding and grind it down. So you know you're starting with good fusing material or argentium or any of the ones that fuse more than sterling wants to. Um, the other thing is that when you're doing sterling to sterling, the depletion gilding was brilliant, but you can't really depletion gild if you've got sterling powder because it's too small to get depletion out of before you melt it.
Okay.
So you're having your challenge is sterling fusing. Fine silver is going to kind of grab it, but it's not really fusing it. So that makes it a little trickier. So you had to superheat it to get it to a
Yeah.
point, and that's probably where you got all your underneath. So when you said it looked like it was reticulated, that's because you were kind of close to reticulating it, right? You were starting to get that surface tension. Versus, and for those of you that don't know what goes on when you're doing reticulation, once you've created a sort of more coppery layer in between, the tension in the melt of the copper point, it gets liquid in the copper layer a lot faster than the outer surfaces of the fine silver. So they're contracting at different speeds, basically. So that's what reticulation, when you see the crinkle of reticulation, that's what's actually happening. So when you were trying to fuse, I suspect you got to that superheat point where it was almost in that melt me point, and that led to your thinning. Um, it's super cool that you managed to put both your kombu on it and your subsequent addition of silver. Were your silver scraps fine silver, or were you using silver foil,
No,
or what were you?
I was using sterling to sterling. I was just an
Okay.
experiment because I've been watching a
Yeah.
lot of the Marnie Ryan videos. So I was like,
Hmm.
everyone keeps on telling me, well, for years I heard you can't really do sterling to sterling. And then, you know,
Sure you can.
Marsha, who I'm not sure if you've unfortunately heard, she's not doing very well. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, like
Just a
close.
reminder that we're on recording. We're on a recording, and it'll be going up on the web, so
Oh
that's
yeah.
probably enough to say.
So I was really inspired by Marsha. And
Hmm.
so she is a really big fan of just fusing, and
Hmm.
she does sterling to sterling fusing, and she does reticulation. And so,
Yep.
she kind of encouraged me, like, you should try some things, just kind of play around and try some things. So I really was really inspired
Nice.
by her. And then I was also really inspired by Thomas, because Thomas, I took his gold on a budget class at the CMAG maker. Oh no, it was at 9020 Studios, and he taught us how to do the kombu on a 3D surface, which frankly, I
Yep.
would have never have had the confidence to even try that without
Yeah.
seeing
Good.
somebody do it, and seeing
Yeah.
that demonstration. So I kind of was just like, this was like an
Playtime.
experiment. I just
That's
wanted to
awesome.
throw all this stuff in it and see, like, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that?
Yeah.
So kind of what I did.
Now, that said, if they aren't too heavy, that would make a gorgeous hoop earring,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I was thinking about actually
Mhm.
maybe because I wasn't happy with the band and how it really fit. So I was actually at one point thinking of doing some sort of like I don't know, like putting a hole in it and maybe doing some like a wire, and I don't know. And then
Yeah.
I actually thought about doing an earring too, or maybe some sort of necklace that, hung down with like some sort of weird, I don't know. I just had all these ideas, but yes, thank you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Run with it. That's awesome. Anybody have other thoughts for her on those techniques she was showing and the processes? Okay, we're a quiet bunch today. Oh, Nancy, you
I
got
was
something?
just going to say it's a fabulous look, and
Yeah.
it's something that definitely can be refined. And you know, I think what you said, Rachel, helps to parse out. It's
Hmm.
actually kind of a fun idea to say, I'm making an everything bagel. I'm
Yeah,
just going to throw a
that's
bunch of stuff
exactly
on
it.
the
That's
wall
great.
and see if it sticks. So,
Yep.
and then from that, you can backtrack and go, okay, well, this caused me a problem here. So I need to, make this change. So, but the piece looks lovely in the sense of the design. So I think it can be carried to a lot of different things. So,
Thank
Your
you.
your everything bagel model is a great one. If you're one of those people who really wants to be able to recreate something, I am not meticulous enough in my note taking by any stretch, but we have phones these days and so on. So if or you can do a voice recorder or whatever. So this is the kind of exercise that if you're doing something like it, take photographs at each step of the way and say, I just did X to it. I'm about to do Y to it. And then you're right, you can reverse engineer it and go, oh, here's where it went astray. Or, hey, here's something that I could try as a variation on it. And then also, I love whenever you're playing, if you have the time and the materials luxury to push it to the point of failure, basically, like go beyond what you think. Because John Cogswell used to say that a lot of the things he did and taught, he did despite other people because nobody ever told him he couldn't. And so he was doing it already before somebody came along and said, "You can't fuse sterling to sterling." Yes, you can. It just has different properties and different reactions to temperature and so on. So the new things get discovered by pushing those boundaries. So everyone, I strongly urge you to do that boundary pushing as much as you can. Okay, Carmen, yeah, I'm not spotting myself because we're doing the show and tell, so I'm spotting people as they pull stuff up. Anybody else have other things they want to share today?
well, I have a couple of things, and my lighting here isn't great, so I really don't know if they'll show up. Um, I just finished doing this fold forming class, which I've done fold forming a lot. Let's see if I can
Hmm.
find a good place to sit. But Nick Grant Barnes, who is fairly well known, and he's a great
Yep.
teacher, and he and some other people developed a technique to use fold forming to make rings. And you have to build your own arbor to crush the ring once you have it built.
Okay.
Um, but it's really, really fun. And let me see. Oh, I don't know. Maybe this would be a good way for you to see them. You tell me.
Ooh.
Nice.
Okay,
Yeah, can you
so
center a little bit more? There you go. Beautiful. And then if you put your hand behind it, your camera will usually focus a little bit better for us. Or not, because that's as good as we're
Yeah,
getting right now.
I know. Let me
Very
take.
cool. So what
So
does it, can you show the
yeah.
inside a little bit?
Yeah, and it's really, this is something that is a completely uncontrolled process, and I haven't finished the inside yet. But inside, you can see I had run it through the mill with some screen.
Nice.
So um,
So does it follow the screen grid as it starts to
not at
collapse?
all, not at all, because
Okay.
it's not that deep.
Hmm.
This is a process that you have no control over in the sense of there's a limit to that control. One thing I
Sure.
did is I made two in copper before I made this sterling one. And fine,
Hmm.
of course, would be better because it collapses. It's going to collapse a little
Yeah.
more readily, I'll say. But the other thing I did, this is the copper one.
Hmm.
So,
Mhm.
and then I
Wow.
came
What a
in
cool
and
effect.
and
Cool.
and did fine silver granulation on it. And I'm going to put
Gorgeous.
gold on the silver one. But what I did with this, the arbor is basically it's a piece of like Delrin, round Delrin with PVC
Yeah.
on the outside. So you fit the ring over it and then squish it. But I
Hmm.
wasn't loving some of the results I was getting from that. That is, I had so little control. So I just put it on the arbor and then I took the other piece of PVC, or you could use a hammer. I used some chasing tools, and that's how I got a more controlled wave in that.
Nice.
So,
You can also get Delrin rod in a bunch of different sizes. So you could
exactly.
potentially put little snippets of Delrin inside your ring, but loose enough that it has collapse room and its bounds become the squish.
Yeah, there are a couple of other things that, as Nick and his friends were developing this, because one of the things I did was I also put it on the ring stretcher, and you can put a jump ring on the inside on the ring stretcher,
Mm.
and that will make an impression from the inside. So
Yep.
it's very experimental in the sense that you're going to get what you get. And what for me, it was a matter of saying, okay, I like this, I'm stopping here, you know.
Super cool.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but because it's, I mean, we did a lot of other of the fold forming, and I just love it. It's so much fun. But I really, when told Nick I was taking the class, I said, "Are you teaching the ring?" He said, "I wasn't planning to," and I said, "Well," and he did. So, because it's just so fun and unique, and I think it has a lot of appeal to people because
Yeah.
it's organic, um, and it's like everything you make joy. It's a little time consuming, but if you have basic skills, you can do it. So
Yeah.
that was my
And
fun.
I've done a bracelet in a
Nancy,
similar
how did
style
you,
to that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Carmen.
I'm sorry. How did you even begin with a long piece? How did you even get the size?
Okay, so that's where the arbor that Nick made, the arbor. You use that for the size. You could he basically has three sizes, like a 6, 7, a 9, and a 12. So the you could use a straight mandrel or something like a dowel. And the sizing corresponds pretty much, but you don't want the taper on it. Though, in fact, if you wanted to,
Mhm.
you could do something more tapered. This is, as Nick always says, change one thing. You'll have,
Yeah.
so you basically, it's like making a sleeve, a bezel, but it's tall because you need room for it to collapse. Right?
Okay.
So it's not like the size of a ring. It's much bigger than would fit on your finger to start. And then you build 2 large jump rings and you put that on the outside. Or you can put it at an angle. Once again, every time you make a change, you're going to get a different effect. But and in fact, if you didn't have an arbor and you just use something like a dowel, or the school has a set of jump ring makers that are basically sized like rings. And I always use something else for making jump rings because I'm not making them usually as big as a ring you'd wear. But using the method where you then use other tools to collapse it, that is, you don't have to. When we were using the arbors, you could put it in a vise and close the vise, right, and move it around. That is, rotate it. So depending on how much pressure you're putting on it, or you can, like I say, take a flat chasing tool if you want, or a round dapping tool, and just hit on one edge and go from one
I
side
wonder,
to
Looks
the
like
other.
it could collapse.
That's where you don't have a ton of control over what happens. It's, in other words, it's unpredictable. And that's why for me, I getting it started with the arbor was okay, but then, and I didn't do it to the silver one. If you see it, it's pretty equal all around, right? Whereas the copper one has a lot more waviness and changes in it.
Can you explain to me what you mean by the arbor? Like, I'm not, when I think of an arbor, I think about like a polishing arbor, or like an arbor that I use on my lapidary wheel.
Well, fortunately, because I'm a really good friend of Nick's, he lent me one. So give me a second to find it so I could
and I'm
finish
going to
it.
encourage you not to give up all of Nick's secrets because he's teaching classes in this, so people can take his workshops too.
That's true, but yes, that's true. And he mostly does things here. He doesn't travel a whole lot.
Got it.
So, and Nick is so generous. I mean, one of the students in the class came in 1 week with these arbors. So this is PVC. This is like Delrin. So you form the ring around this, and then you fit it in here. Like I say, you can place this in a vise, squeeze, or you can leave the ring. This isn't going to fit back on there, but have the ring sitting on here, and then come in, have this in a vise with a chasing tool or something. So building one of these takes a little experimenting. I think that that there's a limit to the PVC. There's lots of Delrin sizes, PVC.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I've
Very cool. What a fun class to have taken.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another one that if you play around at different scales, you can get bracelets, you can get pieces that you put into subsequent earrings. That's
Exactly.
neat.
Yep.
Anybody else got anything exciting? Is that a nod from Carmen? Were you saying yes, you have something to show?
I just did a little production sort of thing.
Is that production you want to
Nothing.
show us? No is
I have to
okay.
find it.
You don't have it handy.
I don't have
No,
it
you're
here.
good. Okay. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
thank you.
Okay. Then I guess I'll show you guys what I've been working on. Let me spotlight me. And so my life has been a whole lot of hinges lately of varying sorts. You are seeing my bench, yes?
Yes.
So
Yes.
this was one of the ones that was in the box of unfinished things. This is going to have petrified palm wood on it, and it's going to have some Kyumbu detailing to sort of emulate the petrified palm. You can see what it looks like. The stones inspired the hollow forms. I don't remember which one goes where. It goes there. So I'm gonna recreate some of this cut through of the palm in Kyumbu along the carved in textures. And this one is a design that is intended to replace one of the pieces that I have out at the museum right now, because I need another big piece on my bench.
Did you do the
So
lapidary work or no?
no, I never do the lapidary work. That is
Oh,
a whole other school of activity. So yeah, I pay people for their beautiful, beautiful stone cutting. Um, and this one is a type of hinge, technically, in that each of these is a little bit hinged. But I'll remind you that a lot of the challenge in hinging is directionality, right? So all of these ones from here down, all go this way. That gives the flex if you have a long, skinny neck, if you have a wider neck like mine, and so on. But if I were to keep them all going in that same direction while I'm hinging, I don't get any bend at the shoulders. And this is a piece that's intended to go up over the shoulders. So part way up, I change the directionality of the hinge, right? I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you guys can get a slightly better view of these. But so down below, it's left, right hinges or forward and back hinges, and go like that. And then up over the shoulder, it becomes the flex. And this would bring us to sort of just at the top of the shoulder or a little bit behind it, depending on the wearer. And in this case, I didn't have to do much beyond that because the rest of it is a chain that can be set at different lengths, which is naturally going to flex both directions the way that the links work, right? In this case, it's separated right now because it's too big when you put it all together to fit in my tumbler, and I needed to get some serious base polishing done. So I'll have to do one tiny little solder and clean up back together once I'm happy with the overall results of it. But I'm debating whether I'm going with a sort of a sand finish or if I'm going with a high polish finish. So I'm still in the midst of that. Otherwise, this is just set aside because I've got other projects that have higher priority. But it's a fun, easy little hinge. So these are just tiny pieces of tubing. It's not the scary, I have to make multiple pieces type of hinge because it's one per side. And then the challenging part is making the little connectors and getting them in place and then soldering them while they're in place, right? So my toughest part on this is soldering closed the little connector points of each square jump ring without fusing or worse, dropping off the soldered on little piece of tubing. And these
curious.
you want to make sure that sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious how you set that up on your soldering bench.
I'm doing it on a brick. I just do straight up, like I position it. So here, I can actually show you on one of them like this. So I'm putting it on the brick. I'm putting I usually actually try to do it from the back side because then if it gets screwed up, my blobs are less obvious. So you'll see a lot of my lumps of solder, which they still need cleaning up, are on the back side. And so I try to create a situation where I don't have anything in the direct path and I'm using a quick small flame going in hot and fast to try and use a tiny chip of solder to flick past this point so that I'm really trying to channel it so I'm barely even heating either side's tube if I can help it. I mean, obviously you're going to heat it some, but you don't want to get into a position where you've got like all this stuff in the way because one, that's going to suck up some of the heat, and two, it puts at risk the other sides of it.
Are you protecting
So
it with anything?
nope, nope,
Okay,
just quick and fast and medium solder by the time I'm here.
okay,
Um,
thanks.
and same as I would do when I'm doing my chain links too. I don't tend you absolutely can if you need to put each link in a pair of third hand tweezers to hold other stuff out of the way. So if you're finding you're melting a lot of your links when you're doing delicate chain, grab this stuff by a pair of tweezers, which steals the heat, and just position it so that your one solder seam is up at the top above the tweezers, and then you can just go in quickly and hit only that. But that means you have to reposition and reposition and reposition for each link, and I am not a patient woman, so I tend to set up my chains just hanging over the barest edge of my brick with all the other solder points as far away from it as possible. and then I'll come in and cut across it. Again, trying not to put my heat towards the other links, but across and away from the other links. So I just go boom, 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 boom. Right? So this is, again, one of the on the bench things. By the way, this pattern on the back is one of my favorite new discoveries because it's so organic. This, I think I may have shown it on one other session, but if you've ever gotten some of the paper stuffing that is slitted all the way down it, so if you, it kind of accordions when you stretch it, this is pieces of that paper. And because it accordions at somewhat random patterning relative to, but not entirely random, you can see it gets these great like grid-like textures, but still a natural effect of the high shiny where the openings are, and then the lower sort of sandpapery looking texture below it. So I'm
Wow,
playing
I
around.
love
Yeah,
that.
isn't it? Isn't that a neat? I would use that on the front of something.
I am always recycling that stuff too. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I never thought about trying to use it.
Yep. So that's project one. That is, I'm doing it in between, like when I need to throw project, this is actually project three, because when I'm feeling like I need to throw project one across the room, I pick up something a little easier, because those are my easy hinges, believe it or not. And then the one that is almost done, if the liver of sulfur doesn't do me in, this is the piece that I'm sending up to Seattle for a show celebrating Phil Baldwin, the man who has done a lot of what you see in modern mokume patterning that you can get. The mokume isn't showing right now because my liver of sulfur is behaving poorly. But this set of hinges is, again, the multi-directional, right? So most of them, similar to the other piece, have this left, right, or back and forth thing because the majority of the necklace needs to be able to flex that way. But again, as it heads up the shoulder, we change it so that it goes the other direction. I'm going to actually get a mannequin form because you can see it really nicely what I'm talking about when it curves over the neckline. And this is, so wait, I can tell you about holoforms. I can tell you about all the design elements that go into it, but until you start doing something, oops, that's wrong direction. Until you start building a piece of this scale
Rachel,
and trying to figure out, yep.
did you change your camera by any chance? I just don't see it sharp like it used to be.
Uh, hmm. Is anybody else seeing it as very fuzzy? Let me see. I don't know what you're seeing because it's showing to me as clear as it looks like on camera.
Okay.
Anybody else seeing it fuzzy?
Maybe it's the lighting and the angle.
Here, let me turn off that light for a bit and see if it adjusts enough. Is that better or worse?
Mm-mm.
Worse.
Worse.
Yeah.
Okay. Try raising up our light and see if that helps. And let's see if I rotate it around a little bit. So it's coming from the front. Any better?
That's better. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
It's
So
fabulous,
one of the things,
fabulous piece.
thank you. It will be when it finally believes me that I want it blackened only in certain places. This is my second pass at cleaning it off and putting it back on. And I think I'm going to go back to Gosiba on try number 3. But what I want to point out is this process that you have to go through when you're designing something like this that you sometimes can't even get until you've got enough of the pieces architecturally planned out. So see how this starts to curve. This is not a great emulation of a human neck, but it's close. So it needs to have a little bit of curve. And my goal on this is actually that somebody wears it sort of rounded out like that. So it lays out on the shoulder, which is why this isn't representative. But I need to have enough flex that, again, if they're long and skinny, it does its work. And this is, as you can see, poking up a little bit more than I would want on this type of neck. So anybody human who looks even remotely like this bodice is going to have challenges right up here. But that's the exercise that is the hardest part, is figuring out when and where to put this together. And this one is the baby sister of the first piece I made like this. The first piece I made had all this shape and nothing but. And when you have a consistent shape, you have a lot more options for evening out where it hits. One of the challenges this piece gave me is that realistically, this is the starting point of the bend, but they aren't perfectly the same size because I used different shape combinations going all the way up. So this one, I think it's this side, hangs a little farther down than this one. So its bend starts like three centimeters, maybe not even 2 centimeters lower than this side does, which no wearer is ever going to care about. They're not going to notice it. It bugs the heck out of me though.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that you get into as you're piecing it together. And what it sometimes means is you have to adapt your design partway through. So I played around with the order of the little pieces and I ended up adding, I think I added a square up at the top because I needed a good surface to change the directionality on, right? Corners of triangles are not great. I can only do one side going this way and then a corner. There was no way to do a flat one on this side. So I had to add a square to give me the connector that I wanted while extending it. I couldn't use just any shape. And so these hinges are traditional 3-piece hinges. They were done in greater haste than I really like. But that's because I have a deadline and I wanted to have a piece in that show. When I get it back, I may end up doing a few adjustments to it. And also, I realized that in my last version of it, I had built an integrated box clasp, and I didn't want to do that because I wasn't enjoying how this took its bend, and an integrated box clasp makes it even harder if you can't get that proper bidirectional flexibility in it. It lays kind of awkwardly because it has to, by its nature, be kind of flat backed at the center of the neck. So this gave me a little bit more opportunity for flex, but I got to put in tiny little, these you can't again see the pattern right now, but these are little mokume baby hollow forms just to be adding a decorative element to it. So certainly hinges are critical to the hollow form multi-part construction. They are not the only way to go. I could absolutely have done something similar to those little tubes with square jump ring connectors and have in fact done that design in other cases. So the situation is one that you can sort of design based on the need, I guess I would say, and design a combination of need and form and function. What do we want it to look like? In this case, because I'm keeping it in the style of another piece that I'm not quite replacing, but making a relative of, I wanted to follow this type of hinge. These are hinge pins that are topped in 18 karat gold. The pin themselves is sterling. And then I want to talk about ending your hinge pins because these, Jude, you were asking about soldering together. Man, I would solder 1,000,000 of those little square jump rings together before having to get into these. And I have worked myself into a bit of a corner on these. There's not a really healthy way to do a hammered fit to these because I have different heights between my various things. Like this is a skinny one, this is a thicker one. There's not like a single surface I can push this against easily. Could I have come up with some kind of a jig, maybe a cup burr to rest it against and tap them out? Yes. And I would be worried that just a hammer riveted setting would eventually, with the amount of action these get and the weight of the piece, would eventually come undone. They would wear down. So what I do in this case, on all my uprights, I solder on a tiny disc of metal that's a little bigger than the tube beneath it. And so it becomes like a nail head, you can see there. And the trick is you got to get him super close. But when I say I've locked myself in a little bit, this is a super high risk soldering exercise because I have two weak spots. I have reticulation material, which has a very low reflow temp. So it gets blobby and melts down the edges like a jelly sandwich, squeezing out the edges. And I have mocha megane, which is also impacted heavily by overheating, and the pattern starts to burn away into the material. The copper and silver try to fuse together and blur the lines. So this is a really, really hard solder. And they're so close together that there's like that trying to create space, like I did on the other piece I just showed you, is much harder. I'm always going to be crossing some weak spot. So this exercise comes with occasional instances of you suddenly discover you've soldered, your solder has flowed in such a way that you've soldered your pieces of one or more of your links of the tubing together, or that worse, you've disconnected a link of the tubing. Usually it ends up being the middle one for some reason, which is one of the hardest to get back in place. So this represents not only all the pain in the butt soldering exercises for the first pass, but it also represents some redos in the course of it. The other one that's even harder, in my opinion, are the upright ones, or the horizontal ones rather. Those I end up tipping in gold on both ends because when we're looking at it, when we're wearing it, we see both ends of the pin, right? So I need to have a nice look, whereas these get hidden and they also rest against the body. That's another reason I like the flat dot instead of a ball on that end, because they won't be poking against my chest when I'm wearing the piece. They just lie flat or flat-ish anyway. So there's a combination of pins that we're using in there. Any questions about any of that?
I'm kind of interested in knowing like like you said you did medium for well, you were using the other example for the hinges, but what are you
Mm-hmm.
doing for the when you do the gold, like to tip the gold on top of the
So
hinge?
the gold is all tipped before I put the pin through,
Oh,
except that second pin, right? And
okay.
that, if I have a lot of space, I do it in medium. If I don't have a lot of space, like I think this little guy was a royal pain, I probably did it in easy. It's one of the few times I use easy. And again, I want to be in and out as fast as I can. Um, and I knew I was going to blacken it. The problem is easy solder is going to look a little different when you blacken it than a medium or a hard. Medium and hard are going to blacken similar to the silver around it, but easy is going to look sort of yellowy. So I try to avoid the easy if I can help it, but I can tell you that on at least two of them, as I was getting to the end and panicking that A, I was running out of time, and B, I was going to melt something and have to step back a few steps. Um, I used an easy solder for some of the pins. I think it was probably two or three.
Thank you.
Other questions?
The middle one,
Yep.
is that gold or?
Yeah, it's a bimetal. So this is a concave mochame on sterling hollow form, and then I do a reverse, a convex bimetal 22 karat gold dome stuffed inside. So from the
Okay,
back, you can see it's the silver of the dome on the back side.
so it's a double. The
It's
top part.
a mochame on the concave
Uh-huh.
and bimetal on the convex that gets set in. So I built the whole hollow form, finished the whole hollow form, shaped the dome and snugged it to, like I did my doming so that it would be a snug fit in there, and then solder it from the back so that it's like setting in an inset bezel.
Okay, okay.
So you made the bimetal, Rachel, or is
No, goodness, no. No,
okay.
I buy my bimetal.
And
Yeah.
what is bimetal?
It's literally thick layers of two metals put together. So it's not like just a surface treatment. It's in this case, I think it comes to me with a half millimeter of gold on top of a millimeter of silver or something.
Okay,
Um, and so it is technically a type of mokamegane exercise. It's the billet basically of a mokamegane. It just hasn't been multi-layered. It's only got two layers. And you can get various kinds of gold on it. You can get silver on copper. You know, some people use it and carve through the material that's the top surface. So you could, if I were to put engraving into this, it would show silver through once I engrave deep enough.
And how,
And it's a great, go ahead.
I was just saying, I've never worked with that. So how
Mhm.
is that to work with? Like, what are the
I use it.
problems?
It's still got the same problems as any married metal combination, which is that most married precious metal combos, their melt temp is radically lower than either of their metals individually, right? It's why you'd only use medium or lower solder when you're soldering mokume-gane. Um, and so yeah, it is easy to overheat it. I love it. I use it primarily. It's the way that I integrate gold into my woven work that you guys have seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I take a strip of it and I thin it, thin it, thin it, and I can weave that in with the silver back and then the gold front.
So do you send it through a rolling mill? Like, is that how
You
you?
can, yeah. You
Okay.
can't, here, let me see. I think I have a chunk of it right now that I can show you. And I personally like the 22 karat gold, but the price of gold is so absurd right now. So this is after I've thinned it a little bit and I've brought it down to, what did I bring it down to? Uh, this is somewhere in the 23 to 24 gauge range right now. And there's still, like I would have to work to get the gold separate from the silver. You can see, I mean, you guys can't see because it's too small for the camera, but so it's a nice solid layer of gold. It's a great way to add elements of gold to your material that is thicker than a kambu and also has more of the surface that we consider traditional. You can polish it up and everything the same as you would other materials. You can get it in different colors of gold. I
Is
think
that a
there may be a
reactive?
platinum.
Is that a reactive metals product?
Reactive used to sell it, but now that Phil is gone, I don't know whether they still are. I buy mine from David H. Fell, for whom you need a wholesaler's account. Um,
And
well worth it.
when you put that through the mill, does it
Mhm.
come soft enough? Do you have to anneal it? Which sounds like that
You
would
can,
be tricky.
yeah, no, you can anneal it, same as you do other things. I mean, it's going to take soldering heat and so on. It's just about the length of time you put your heat on it that's the risk. Because gold will melt into silver and disappear if you overheat it. Um,
Mm.
so it's basically that you can overfuse it and start to make it blend. But knock on wood, the thickness of bimetal for me, I haven't had that same problem, even the way that I have when I have, say, a thin piece of straight up gold that I fuse down. By having that silver layer, they've done the hard part of the really good fusing between the two layers. Um, so it's a lot of fun to play with. I use it decoratively on things. Like I thought in for a moment when we were looking at Jude's piece earlier that she had used similar scraps. And it gives a little more dimension because you can get it in different thicknesses. So I think when I order it, right now, I'm ordering, does it tell me my gauge? I guess I can order it in 24 gauge or 18 gauge, I think. Um, and I think I have 24 gauge. Yeah, I have 24 gauge as the starting point. So I didn't thin this very much. I would thin it a lot more for doing my weaving. My weaving, I bring it down to about 28 gauge. And it has just a really, like, I like being able to work with 22 karat, and it has the stabilizer of the silver, right? 22 karat by itself is very soft and pliable. As soon as it gets backed, it's much more consequential. And
Mm-hmm.
so I can do the decorative elements. I mean, obviously, doming it is going to make it extra, extra strong, but when I'm working flat, even, I like it. Questions? More questions about this one before we move on to today's, our
So
third of the massive. Go ahead.
do you stamp it gold?
I'm a horrible, horrible jeweler who would not make my way in England. I don't put my carat stamps on things.
Mm-hmm.
I use too many varieties of metal. I'll happily tell somebody what it is. I'll happily put it on their receipt and sign my name to it if they need it.
How would you
And I
stamp
know
bimetal?
so what you're supposed to do is stamp all the different materials that are in it, right? So this is bimetal is usually either sterling backed or argentium backed, depending on who's manufacturing it. And so you would stamp it with those percentages. So if it were argentium, what is argentium these days? 945 or something like that, and 22K. And in this case, I have my mokume, so that's something else. And I have my reticulation silver, which is what, like 915 or 895 or somewhere in that vicinity. Like, am I going to put all those numbers on my piece? No.
Wow.
The piece stands for itself, right? I'm never going to be the person whose work is valued for the materials in terms of dollar value. My work is valued for the work. I'm giving you terrible advice because the government regulations around it have changed recently. So we are supposed to be marking it if we are also putting our stamp on it. If you don't put your maker's mark on it, you are not in the United States anyway, obligated to put your carats and so on it.
It just changed that? Like I didn't heard about
Like a
that yet.
year and a half ago. Yeah, a year and a half, 2 years ago.
So if you put your
You've
mark
never,
on it, you're supposed to put
you're
the
supposed
metal.
to. Yeah, I think that's the current base regulation, but I care so little about it that I don't follow it very closely. I just know there was a big hubbub when it changed about a year and a half ago. Any other
So
questions
who's
on this
regulating
piece?
it? That's weird. Who's regulating it?
Theoretically, the Bureau of Tobacco and Firearms, I think, is responsible for something like that. It's one of the weird agencies that has all kinds of different coverages.
Hmm.
But I'm also not selling outside of the US.
Uh-huh.
So if like in Germany and in Europe, in much of Europe, you have to get it actually assayed and carat stamped by one of the official organizations.
So I thought that once you darken a piece, it's so hard to redarken it. So how are you
Yes,
taking
it
it
is.
off?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
Because
had that
because
it's
question too. How do you take it off? And like, what are you going to do
so
to get it off?
it's a combination of things. I am doing both. So the scrubby wheels take a big chunk of it off,
hmm
but they don't take all of it off. I also did some tumbling in Hone and Highlight, which did a little bit of roughening it up. And then I use one of the things that I found that worked best are, do I have any of them immediately to hand? Hang on a sec. I have as a final polishing tool these OPI Shiner nail buffs. 1,000 grit on the green side, 4,000 grit on the white side. These things polish like nobody's business. Like I take these to my craft shows. I'm going to show you what it does to gold. You guys see that? 30 seconds, not
wow.
even, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy good. That's the white side. The green side, being coarser, doesn't do quite that much, and it gives it a sort of a slightly satiny effect. But man, does it take this stuff off well. It's just I
Wow.
ruin every one of them that I do, right? So it does a really beautiful job. And so this was really good for like getting into my corners and stuff. Yeah, you see all of the crud I've got on there from my last dip on it.
Where do you get
Um,
Rachel?
I ordered them online, and the thing is that they usually come as a set with all kinds of other grits that are useless to me. So I found
Mm.
one place that was selling this brand via Amazon, but you had to buy like 30 of them at a time. Um, they're literally things that I would hand out to my customers if I had them in bulk because they're that good at polishing. Um, but they're definitely a perishable. And this is the only brand that I really, really like. I've tried a few others. I don't think I have kept any of those easily to hand because I don't use them. And even if they come with the same apparent colors of grit and they claim they're the 1,000 and 4,000, they just they don't manage. So look around, Google Shiner OPI 1,000, 4,000, and you may find like a beauty supply place that does it or something. But that's so that I spent about 3 hours taking the blackening off the last time I cleaned it up. And then the last thing that I did was soap and water scrub and then pumice scrub to get all the grease off, all the other cleaning agents off, and so on before I dipped it a second time. But I don't know whether I just have a bad batch of, I just bought a fresh thing of liver of sulfur gel. It's just not behaving the way I want it to. The first time it went completely brown. So I assumed it was on me for not having something taken off of the material. And this time it went to this black and like titanium look, which if I were going for that peacock effect on there, that'd be awesome. But I was not.
Oh, that sucks.
So yeah. Yes, it does, because I have to photograph this and get the photographs in on Friday
Oh,
in order
no.
to be part of the process.
Maybe it's something in your water supply chain that might have affected
Could
it.
be.
You might try.
Yeah, it could be.
next
That's
time
not a
with
bad call.
distilled.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Gasiba, frankly, because I know how it behaves. I was just trying the liver sulfur because it tends to pop the mokame a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I don't have that luxury. Okay, so now on to our long-standing projects. Despite all of the work you saw me put into all of those, I have also made some progress on our big project. And I've had to stop myself to save a few steps to show you guys because I was getting in the groove. Where did I put all the pieces? Oh, there we go. So, hinges, hinges, hinges. So this one is closer to what we just saw in the Mokame piece than to that first one. In that we're going to do hinges that are tube hinges, standard tube hinges. Now I got to play the puzzle game and put all the right sizes together. And for those of you that haven't been along on the whole journey, this was one of the, in fact, wait a minute, let me lay it out and then I'll tell the story, the backstory of how we got to where we are today. Oops, that looks like that's the wrong one. I need to put some of this, I bet. This, that. The number of times I have redone this puzzle is kind of astounding. That, and that, boom, voila. Okay, let me get the stone that started this all. This was the very first project that came out that we decided to, other than the destruction work that I was doing and some repairs, this is the very first project we decided to fully redesign as we started the Box of Unfinished Things journey a year and a half ago. So this is a slow moving project. So
What
this
kind of
stone
stone?
was original. Pardon?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask what the stone was.
Oh, it's a quartz druzy cut by Joe Jelks, and he does these amazing center druzy pieces that he's then high polished the work around it. And I love them. And I've had this one forever because its color wasn't quite what I was looking for the project I had. And I sort of stagnated on what was originally going to be, oh, I put them all away. It was originally going to be a link chain. And in the course of discovery with this crew, I realized that I felt the chain was not up to the quality of the stone. It was an interesting chain, but it wasn't a wow me project for this spectacular stone. Somehow that ended with me wanting to do a hollow form. I don't know how. I just don't like hollow forms all that much, you can tell. And then the hollow form led to me saying, well, if I'm going to do that, originally I was thinking I was going to lock them together. They were going to be permanently, it was going to be a statement piece like this, and then I would do a chain off of that. But I realized, well, I better figure out what I want for a connector for how am I going to clasp it. And so that led to us inventing this crazy locking, multi-part locking clasp, which slots in and then rests. And this is going to be on the side of the body, right? This is going to be along the shoulder, along the breastbone, basically, along the chest line. And so, well, by the time we had done that, a chain was way too inadequate for the heft and the dimensions of this project. And so we went to hollow forms. And so with my structure, with the chain collection, what I do is I pick one really interesting stone or multiple stones as a set, and I riff off of it in the chain links. And I haven't done that yet with the hollow forms per se. A lot of the hollow forms are that mokume or other things that go into it. Actually, I have done it on one other piece in this series. And so I said, well, what is this? What is the format of this hollow form and what are the challenges I want? So I decided I was going to repeat the texture in a reticulation silver that is nested in as if it were the inside of the geode, right? And I'm currently thinking that I'll be kambuing the surfaces of the smooth ones and blackening the interior so it does a pop. I may change my mind and reverse that. I'm not sure. Or I may decide that that's way too much by the time I'm done and I don't want to add that level of complexity to the design. And then I wanted something to counterbalance it, which lines up with this reticulation. And so it's alternating the reticulations running one way and the opening pieces running the other. So now I will say what I've said at a couple points to the folks that have been on the whole journey with me here. This is not the order in which I would normally design a piece of this scale and complexity. This is a little bit like that game where one person draws something on a piece of paper and folds it over and hides it, and the next person draws the next section and so on. So except I'm the only person doing all the construction. So we've been making choices driven by what's next in the sort of the gut feel of what is and isn't working about it. I would have originally normally done on a piece of this scale some sketching, some marking up in my drawings of kinds of stones I want to use, materials I want to use, look, and so on. But because we're going through the box of unfinished things journey, I'm trying to sort of embrace the evolution of it a whole lot. So where we are now is that we've got to make connectors, which when last we met on this piece, we've had a couple sessions since then. I was unsure which one I was going to do because this also could work with the there's a method to my madness for the pieces I've shown you. So there's a version of this kind of hinge where you just put those loops up top, right? And if I put them up top, then I have even more fluidity between the pieces. So I could have done a connection, but then I get to that weird, how do I do the angles going when I get to the fold? And this is the hardest part because I'm going to have a lot of heavy material at the back of the neck, right? So I need a lot more flexibility than just the changing of directions that I'd get out of this style. So we moved from originally thinking we were going to go with this into a more traditional 3-pin hinge. And by the nature of the repeating design, we end up with all of the flats getting fold forward back, right? And all of the corners giving us our fluidity to flex depending on the size of the neck of the wearer. So if I need it long and narrow, it's going to go down at each of the corner points. And if I need it to fold more around their body, it's going to do that more here. Right? You with me on those decision trees that we've been through?
Yeah,
Any questions?
It's been a long time.
It has. Yep. Yep.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
It is. It's very, very close. Any questions about the pieces, the techniques, etc.? Okay. So where we are now, besides I've left a set of hinges and I've left the ultimate, how am I connecting it here? And this one is just going to get a standard corner, but this one is going to come in and probably be a flat hinge, but I may want something a little more locked in. I may want to have like a cross piece or something. I'm got to decide what's the mobility, but I'm leaving that decision till later on because I want to see how this stays on the body. Part of the reason that we're coming in here is because that will help support keeping this along the neckline the way that I want it to. Because I'm going to take that stone out because I'm terrified I'm going to get 30 seconds from being done with this project and break it. What I'm envisioning is that this is going to rest about here while the rest works its way up and around, right? Oh, I'm in too close for you guys to see that. Hang on a sec. So the goal is that this piece sits here, and then the necklace starts building and building up and around till the biggest piece hits right about there. There's a vision in my head. It's a staggering our way towards the finish line vision, but it's there. Questions?
It's a cool design. I don't have questions, but it's really neat.
Thank you. It's getting there. All right. So let's talk about the last time I was having a hard time being steady enough because my blood sugar was doing funny things for me to get you a hinge demo. But we did a lot of talking about some of the ways to go about doing hinges. And those include things like buying yourself a stack of pencil leads that you can use and put between things. And I'm going to draw this one again because this is worth repeating. Even though it's not a process I tend to do. Again, I am an impatient jeweler, so I tend to go past that, but I also have a very strong eye for positioning things, and not everybody does. These pencil leads are fantastic for it, but if I have tube number 1, tube number 2, and tube number 3, what I can do is I'm going to actually do this in 2 colors so that you can really get the feel of it. Tube number 3 is stuffed in here because this one's getting attached over here and this one's getting attached over here. You can run a boatload of pencil leads through the tubing, right? All the way through, and they'll help hold them in position. You sort of stuff them in there, and then you would run a set of them here to keep it from bumping up against that point. Right? It's a great way to lock them in place without having to use whiteout or ochre, yellow ochre, or anything like that. You can also do yellow ochre or whiteout. If you're doing whiteout, please, please, please get the waterproof version of it. The other one, and even if you're using the waterproof version of it, you want to let it dry, and burn off, get the alcohol or whatever they use as their agent to come off of it before you start soldering around it. But the non-waterproof version is really, really, really toxic when it burns. So avoid just grab a bottle of whiteout. I hate yellow ochre. I hate whiteout because I have yet to be coordinated enough to not get it everywhere. So I avoid it like the plague. If I were going to use it, I would absolutely choose whiteout over yellow ochre as a personal matter of taste.
Rachel, when you say pencil
Yeah.
leads, you're talking about like the pencil leads that you buy with like the retractable like, pencils.
Yeah, mechanical. Yeah, and you can if you look, you can get them in a bunch of different thicknesses. Because artists use them in huge thickness range. And even the basics for mechanical pencils, you can get 0.5 millimeter and 0.7 millimeter and 0.3 if you dig. So I actually put them in my Amazon to buy list and haven't gone around and bought I found a variety pack of at least 3 different sizes. And they're going to break on you every once in a while, but they're not going to stick. They keep it from sticking to things it shouldn't. The other thing is you can also use a pencil and actually sort of use it as a short-term whiteout by pencil leading all over whatever you don't want it to flow to. Or graphite, if you have powdered graphite, you could do that too, but it gets a little messy. You can also, if you have an acetylene air torch, you can put pieces in the flame briefly while covering up your air holes, and it creates an ash that coats the piece, and that helps as a resist. None of them are permanent resists. They're all just sort of short-term char the thing so that the solder doesn't flow where you don't want it to.
So it's essentially dirty. Is that what you mean?
It's essentially so dirty that the solder wants to only flow to where you've left clean instead. Yeah. Yeah. That was the pencil lead version. Then this is another great version if you are just feeling like you melt every single thing you do and you can never position things well, do tube wastage model, right? Tube wastage model is one where you do a whole tube, except you cut half of it away. So we've got this, right? And this is going to this side. And then once we've positioned that, we cut away the rest so that we end up with a gap that's exactly spaced the way we want it. And then we do our other one inside and attach that. Because then we're locked in, we've got 2 successful solder points, and all we're doing is spacing relative to it. Okay? You can also do the eyeball model. That's what I do a lot, and it's a terrible habit to show you guys, and it's sloppy. I will say that freely, that the speed with which I did all of the other ones, it means that I'm not pleased with some of my connections. I have some gapping that I don't like and so on. A well-designed hinge is going to be a very snug set of 3. And so you can also err on the side of caution and just build this one big, right? And then sand and file to get it back down, which I have been known to do a number of times. I'm trying to think if I missed any variations that I usually tell people about. I think those are the biggies. Yeah, that's the major part. And obviously that's just a 3-point hinge. It gets a little more tricky when you get to 5 or 7. Just remember that a hinge with knuckles should always have an odd number of knuckles, because if you put an even number of knuckles in, nothing stops the torque, right? By having a set of knuckles, these outer ones are always held in a constant plane, and so all the action has to happen in here. So snug fit strengthens your piece, and multiple and odd numbers is what stabilizes it. So this combination, if I have any torque, it's only because of my not a tight fit. It's not because the ends are being wobbled. Okay, so some of the things that can help. We always want to put some kind of a placeholder for it that gives us our best surface area. So in my case, I got to zoom in again for you guys to see this a little more closely. In my case, what I'm doing is I'm filing and grinding a little channel into which the tube can rest. And the reason that you need this coverage area is because if you just put your tube on a flat surface, only the very bottom of the tube is going to be holding it in place. You're counting on a very weak solder joint. By creating a little channel, you give enough surface area to give it some real grip. And one of the things that I hate most about doing a multi-hinge project is that by the time I think I've got them all done, I have to go through and check them all, because guaranteed one or more of them will not be as well soldered down as I was sure I had gotten at that point, right? And I want to find that out before I'm on my 5th pinning together of the hinges. So on these, oops, let me see which ones are my set here. There we go. So on this set, I have my corners. That's a corner, that's a corner. So I have built out the corner that's going to match opposite this corner. Right. Oops, I'm out of frame. I apologize. So this corner is going to go there. And this corner is going to go connected to this one, which I've already started my channel point, because I know where I want it to go, but I need to do a little more work on it. Now, one of the things I would highly recommend is when you're doing your first one on these, don't do it on a project where your heights are different heights as your first try. This is going to be a lot trickier to position than one where the pieces are the same height, because I have to do it relative to where I've got room for the hinge to swing. Now, what do I mean by that in the context of connecting these pieces? Let me show you one that is done, and that will make more sense. One that's done on the corners. So I have to get my single side to fit at the right height so that it's not, you know, lifted off the ground on one end and not on the other. I want them to be equal to each other. And if I were doing that against a taller piece, I would be limited to only having, like, there'd be a tiny little point at which all of this weight would be held and it would be poorly supported. Or worse yet, in the case of this particular connection, which I'm going to have to deal with. Oh, no, I don't have to on the other end because I'm not doing that kind of a connection. But if I were connecting to this side, I've got a lift underneath it. And so look there's only the very, very bottom of this super heavy piece. I would have to put my tube right down at the bottom. And again, weight and torque can be a real drain on the setup. So if I were to do that right there, my weight this way, this would be hefting against that one tiny little connector I have, that one joint, one knuckle. So give it some thought before positioning your relative hinges. In my case, I'm in a little better shape on the real end because it does go flush to the ground in equal proportions where it's going to connect.
I have a
But for now,
question, Rachel.
sure, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so in that last scenario where it's
Mhm.
bigger, and would you not possibly think of raising it toward the middle more, or no?
Then my piece would be lifted off of. So the answer is yes, but right, my piece would be lifted up here on this one spot, but the rest of my necklace is going to be resting on the body. So it's going to have, instead of having the torque because of the weight, then it gets the torque because it's out of alignment with all the rest of the pieces. This one would be lifted up at the corner to meet the middle,
Okay.
right?
So
Is
you
that
couldn't
answering
do
your
something
question?
like that where like you do it on two ends and then you go back down, like you step it. Has that ever been, yeah, just my brain how it works. I'm like, if I ever encounter that, could you do that? Could you put it on both ends and then step it down on the next ends?
Do you mean I would put something like I've done here to balance the height on this one
Yeah.
and on this one?
Yeah. And then step
Yeah,
it
I
down.
could, but then I'm going to get this look between my pieces, right? So my next hinge, my this direction hinge, I'm just pushing the issue further downstream, right? Does
Okay.
it, let's look at these hinges. Where's one? So these hinges also have very limited access, right? And I would have to shift this higher by a smidge, and then it would be off kilter. And then maybe the next one I get another 0.5 millimeter back and so on. So it's not going to rest very gracefully on the body by the time it's spinning around at different levels around the
Okay.
neckline, right? So yeah, I mean, it's part of that design thing, and it's part of why on these kinds of pieces, they're 100+ hour pieces. You're spending time engineering and then re-engineering when you realize your original design concept doesn't quite do what you thought it did. So let's see, we were going to make this combination. Is that the right one? Yes. So we're going to put this hinge together, and then we'll come back and we will do the other direction hinge. But for now, I'm just going to work on this one. And I happen to have a set of tiny little tubes pre-prepped for just this purpose. Are you guys seeing my bench? You are seeing my bench. So the trick here is that I need to get both a bottom one and a top one that have roughly the gap, ideally perfectly the gap, but in some cases I'm going to assume I'm doing a little filing, while also stabilizing. So here, the top one is either going to be a very short piece or it's going to stick up a little bit. Now, sticking up a little bit is okay with the design I've got. I just need to make sure that I have enough solder bond above this ring on this side. Otherwise, it's going to be the weak spot, right? So that one would be if I were doing it flush, but I'm going to go with something that's a little thicker than that. Do I have my mid-size somewhere? And know that it's going to stick over the top by a smidge. I could always sand it down later if I decide to, but what I really need is to have the height. I mean, excuse me, have the, what I care about is, do I have enough surface area here? So here's where we get into the extra fun part. And this is where those pencil leads would be really helpful, because I could stuff some pencil leads down this. And I also really, really need to go and grind my brick down so it's flat. That's giving me some grief on this exercise. But I keep waiting until I run out of solder in the mix, and I haven't gotten there yet. So another option for me, by the way, is I could solder on the bottom one without anything in the way to give me a stabilizing point. And then I can come back in and position, because one point is never going to be hard to get relative to where I want it, because I know exactly where I'm going. Trying to do two at once is an option, but notice that because I have to do that little offset, if I don't have those pencil leads, it wants to tip on me. And that's a little trickier. So this is a way to do it. I can try and get solder and solder at once. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to get stable on the bottom piece, and then I'll be able to flip over and do the other one. So I'm fluxing. I'm trying to flux if my flux brush will behave. Keeping the other piece out of the way. And I am doing almost all of this kind of work with pick soldering, which is something that took a while for me to master, but boy, it makes a difference in chain making, in delicate putting down of earring posts, in all kinds of exercises. This is a hollow form. I do have a hole drilled in so that it has an air vent, and because it's been in the pickle recently, it's probably going to vent a little bit for me. So I'm going to face that hole away from me so I don't get chemically steam, and I'm going to use medium, not hard. And I'm fairly generous when I'm doing a solder like this, because I want it to really have good flow behind the piece. I need new solder picks, guys. Man, this wants to stick to the wrong things. So what I'm trying to do is get the solder to touch down beside the tubing. See if I can show you that. Beside the tubing, and then ideally I want to draw it through there. Because it's a big hollow form and a small tube, it's really easy to overheat the tube. I go through a lot of tube. I'll toss it if it gets too distorted. So I'm looking to draw the solder to this side through the between the tubing, through my little curved setup piece that I built in. And it's thinking. It can't decide if it wants to flow today. Come on. Flow for me. The bigger the piece you're working on, the harder this kind of solder, tiny solder, is going to be. Come on. Turn up a little bit. Try to get in faster. The risk I have is getting too muddy on my reticulation silvers. I don't want that getting melty on me. And you may want to know why I wouldn't use an easy. There's a couple of reasons. One is I've got a few more solder points to do to this, not the least of which is getting the pin in place. Go. Just thinking about flowing properly. There we go. Come on. All right. So I'm going to check that it actually flowed and it's not just partially. Yeah, that got all the way through. Okay, so I've now got my baseline. Now I can position relative to it. And I could flip this whole thing over and fit it perfectly, or now I should be stable enough that I can get in place. Ew, that is a lot of pickles still in that puppy. Hang on a sec. That's a little more than I want to be breathing in. So I'm using the piece as the one on the other side as an offset stabilizer, but I don't want it jammed up against the piece or else I risk flowing solder past it, right? So you can see it's offset. And another thing you can do is you can, since it's a single center position, you can offset to one side so that you can really try to get in where you are going to be soldering. Come here, little guy. I often will dip it in a little bit of flux while it's still warm so that it can kind of glue in place. Oops, but I've got the wrong height. I meant to do the taller one. Yeah, need to deal with this block. Okay, so now I've got my, basically my spacer in the form of the other piece. See if I can get some flux on there without wiping everything out. And I do try to do these all while it's still hot. I know you see me doing tweezery things, but you don't have to. You can reheat. One of the reasons I'm particularly conscious about it is I don't like super reheating the reticulation or mokume if I can help it. So by trying to get it all done in one pass, it's a little healthier for the piece if I can keep it going. All right, so again, medium solder. And a reminder that you don't have to set up the way that I do, putting those pencil leads down there or flipping it on its edge and working that way works too. In this case, I'm trying to come in from the top because I know I can get a position in there that's hopefully not going to get in the way. Come on, except for when it wants to sit someplace that I don't want it to sit. Trying to come in at the very boundary of that tube. Make sure I'm still positioned above the other tube. That's another reason for having the channel, because the channel drives being lined up, because it can only be in that channel. I'm gonna turn on my vent system, guys. Hang on. Notice that I'm trying to avoid this end of it, trying to focus my heat on the tubes that are on the side I'm working to try and get this little bit flowing for me. And always start with just a little bit of solder, especially when you're doing this connector, the top one, because otherwise you're going to flow solder down in places you don't actually want it stuck. If you can get it tacked in place, you can then move the other one a little further away, so it's lower risk. I think I'm tacked, but we're going to find out together. Can't do that one-handed. I may be soldered through. It's moving, but it's not moving the direction I want it to move. Let's see. Yep. So I managed to unsolder my middle one, gang. So let me see if we can salvage this or if I have to cut them or take them off entirely. We'll find out. I may have to cool it before I can really pull it apart. Yep, have to cool it. Now, in general, not a great idea to quench in any heavy duty way a hollow form. I tend to cheat it occasionally and try and bring in a little dribble of water. But if you quench it, you can collapse the hollow form. Oh man, this was a real deal. I managed to flow way more solder than I thought I had. Yep, we're waiting on that one to see if we can get it pulled out or if I have to unsolder the batch. This is my life for the past 3 weeks of doing hinges. Any questions on that, gang, while we let it cool for a minute to recover from that?
What happened? You soldered the.
So the middle joint flowed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it flowed where it flowed on the other hollow form. So it basically unsoldered itself and decided it wanted to stay with the ones above and below it. Happens a
Oh,
lot. Yeah.
If you would
It
have had the
basically, I
lead,
got,
would it have helped with the lead in
yeah,
there?
it would have maybe let me scoot it microscopically further apart while still stabilizing. In which case maybe, but the problem is, so the challenge with putting these big hollow forms next to each other is they create this little like cavern of heat area. If I'm doing a hinge on like a bezel setting and a pendant unit or something like that, I have more air going between them. But I've got these teeny tiny corners that I'm working at with big, heavy heat sinks that I have to bring so far up to heat that the whole area gets superheated. So do I expect you to have this same chat like a locket? You're working two separate units. They are usually curved and moving away from each other. A lot easier to get in there. And you can often work those flat this way. So you'll see when we do the other direction, the horizontal hinges are actually a little easier to access because we can keep them further apart because they're lying flat on our bench. We'll do one of those in a moment once that cools. Do I have any left other than the one that's connected to that? I don't think I do.
would it be
While we're
easier
letting,
if, I
go
mean, you
ahead.
know where it's gonna go,
Yep.
wouldn't, but I know that you're not using hard solder because of the mokume, but
And the
wouldn't,
hollow forms and the, yeah.
yeah, would it, how about if we just soldered it a little bit before you put them together?
So
Without,
that's what I'm doing as the first pass is the tack soldering. And what I was trying to do was tack solder it enough that I could then separate them a bit, still keeping that last little bit of stabilizing. Like, so before I was sort of crossed over like this, and I would have pulled them to be more like that, just enough to hold the position and do my finished soldering. But when I was here, I
uh-huh,
managed to overheat the little the middle one's attachment solder because it's
mm-hmm,
in such a tight corner and because, so this is thick material I'm working with. The reticulation silver is really thick. It's then on a hollow form construction that needs to be brought up to heat and they're crunched into a corner. So maybe next time I'll try to reposition, maybe I'll take it and flip the curves so that I give myself a little more entry point for the heat to come in like like an ocean wave instead of right at the corner there. But this is gonna, I mean, you are watching live while I do exactly what happens to me when I'm at the bench when nobody's looking. Um,
yeah.
and it, I have to recover from it. So I didn't tell you the story on the second to last big problem I had on the Mokume one was I had been going gangbusters to make all my hinges, and I went to start putting my hinge pins in and discovered that somewhere along the way I had picked up a segment of thin wall tubing, and I'd mixed it in with my thick wall bezel, thick wall links. So I was like, why is the pin going in so much more easily on one end than on the other? A third of my hinges I had soldered down using thin walled tubing. So I had to go back through, take them all off, clean it all up, rebuild my channel, put them back down. Shit happens,
Ooh.
guys. It's about how you recover from it, right? That shouldn't be, but if you're careful with it, it's about not an I'm throwing it across the room and giving up on it. It is the reason that a lot of our projects end up in the box of unfinished things is I just can't do it. And for me, my rule of thumb is if I can't fix, if it keeps breaking 3 times in really consequential ways, it's telling me it's not ready to be made. So I then put it aside in the box. But don't just give up. See about whether there's a recovery. Like on this particular hinge, we're going to recover either by once it's cooled and I can quench it and clear the flux out of the way, that middle one may just pop out for me. Or I'm going to be taking all 3 knuckles off and we're going to clean it up and redo it. It happens. So, other questions? Or shall I talk a little bit about what I'm going to be doing for pins on this? Pins? Okay.
Yeah.
So because I'm a crazy lady and you guys have inspired me to do all kinds of big deal connectors, I'm going to intersperse 2 types of connections. Let me zoom in a little bit. So one is going to be the gold tips like we did. And I set one up so that I can show you what I do for that. Now I will say, this is a handy thing about a 3 knuckle hinge is that in the worst case, if I solder the ball here and I happen to also solder it to the top knuckle, no big deal, right? It's still going to pivot because it's pivoting on the single knuckle of the next one down. So don't freak out if you do that. It just means your pin isn't going to rotate in place. It's just going to be locked in place. That's okay. It's going to function the same, right? So that's the direction that these are going to be gold tipped on either end. And then here's where I got a little nuts. Oops, I'm getting pickle in my cut, so it's stinging. Bear with me. The vertical ones, do I have one that I can set this up in? Not that one. Oh, this one goes to this side. That's why I'm a little nuts here. All right, so in a vertical one, I am thinking that make a little setting in each one.
Can you pull back a
here.
little bit, Rachel?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not in screen.
Thank you.
So this is a rough fit because I was trying to mock up what it would look like. I'm not there yet. So what I'm headed towards is that I want to cap these off, and this is not the color I'll be using. I'll show you the color in a second. Each one topped by a tiny little stone. Now I've got to zoom in so you can actually see what that looks like. Back here.
Ooh.
So teeny tiny little stones at each of the uprights.
Tube setting?
So ish. It's probably going to be, that's what I'm playing around with now, because what I'm going to need to do in order to do this is tube on the top and post on the bottom. And then I'll either do that little dot on the bottom like I did on the other one, or in this case, I may be able to do the a true rivet setting, because they're all equal height. But what I really want is for it to sort of just continue out as like another knuckle. And so that's what I've been playing around with is how am I going to do that? Because you always, always, always want your post to be as snug as you can make it. Um, and my tubing, oops, there's my ruby. My tubing is just between a 12 and a 13 gauge interior diameter. So I'm either going to have to draw some of that half size, or I'm going to have to find another way to come here, little stone. Or I'm going to have to find another way to widen the top a little bit to flare it. And then these are the colors I want to use. I want to use an orange sapphire because I think they will complement. Let's bring back our stone. I think they'll brighten up and complement the stone nicely. But it's got a slightly yellowish orangey hue behind it. So that's where I'm headed. I was already going to put a few faceted tube set stones in gold scattered on here. And so I'll play around with that a little bit, but that's what I'm thinking of. And I've been playing with how do I make these little cone topped, tube topped things. And it's giving me a little bit more grief than I expected it to because of the differential in the tubing. So those are some of the things I'm considering. Questions about any of that?
You're only going to do it on a few, not all of them, right?
I'll do it at every corner, right? So the in-betweens get the gold posts.
Okay.
So it would be stone, gold, stone, gold, stone, gold. So it's 8 of them or 7 of them around the neck point. Because I realized the gold is going to be either too much or too little. If I don't want to have gold here when I also have expectations of gold either inset or outside or combination I may end up with. I think it will be lost in the bead facing upright, which is why I wanted to go with something a little sparkly. I'm way over designing this because we're doing it in pieces is what it comes down to. None of these outcomes would have been on the original sketch.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Okay, let me grab the material that we're going to touch up and see what we got. Okay, is this little guy going to come out when we tug? Not so much. Let's see. Saw him a little bit to encourage him out. And fire. All the tools wandering wherever they want to wander. Where is, there we go. Cornered players. So yeah, it definitely came and hit the back wall more than I thought I had. So I had it closer to the back of the piece on that top solder. So I am going to err on the side of taking both of these off and cleaning up my solder line again, which I'm going to do with the torch because it'll get me the cleanest removal. If I were to just cut and file, I would never know for sure that I had gotten all of the material off between the tube and the solder. I would have potentially a little sliver of solder in the way of other things. So I'm just going to pop in here. Again, going in pretty hot because my goal is get the solder flowing and take them off as quickly as I can. And I'm going to count these tubes as shot. I'm not going to try and reuse them. One. Two. Okay, so those are clear. We got to let it cool so that I can then grind back past the all the solder that's blobbed up there now because it's all over the place. So we'll let that do its thing. And we will look at one of the other ones. Let's see. So we want what's the other piece? There we go. This one goes here. Ooh, unpleasant addition to our problems. So it managed to pull away and create a hole in the wall. Oh, I'm not showing you that what I'm seeing on my screen. So it managed to create a hole in the hollow form. Not the hole that is the good hole, which is drilling where it lets the air out, although it looks like I've managed to also solder over that one. So one thing I'm going to do before I go further on, this is the one that only gets one piece to it. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a new, make sure we have an air hole. I think there's probably air holes tucked underneath on this one, and that's why I didn't stress too much about it. But I want to be sure. And then we're going to plug the one that was the accidental hole, which is a good recovery exercise for you. If it were super, super bad, I would make a whole new hollow form. But I think we still are in okay shape. I'm going to put just a hole for air. Oops, I'm in forward instead of reverse. That helps.
How big does the hole need to be for that?
The answer is it depends. In truth, you're going to be happiest if you put two holes sort of opposite each other, but they don't have to, this is a tiny little drill bit. Two holes allows you to get stuff in and out naturally. It doesn't create a sort of a vacuum situation. If you have one hole, you're going to take a needle, like a syringe, and draw your acids and stuff out between rounds. So you do a rinse, you do a baking soda pickle, and with the baking soda pickle, I usually, after I've let it sit for a while, I go in and I do the draw out with the syringe and then rinse it some more and flush it with water through the syringe. But if you have two holes, it's going to do that on its own, basically. So it doesn't have to be much, but it does have to be enough to create room to get stuff out. And in some cases, you'll find that you can accidentally flow. So one of the things we discovered was it on this series? I had one that exploded on me because the liquid form of the reticulation silver flowed down and blocked the hole without me realizing it while I was working. And then it became superheated and then it's expanded. Okay, so what I'm doing, this is the hole that that tore out with the hinge bit. And so what I'm doing in this case is I'm making it a little bigger so that I can stuff a little piece of wire in there. And I want a tight fitting piece of wire. Let's see if this is going to do. I could try to solder fill it, but it might flow out on me later. Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm just taking a scrap of wire. Gotta be careful not to wreck the hinge on the other side while I'm at it. And I'm going to stuff it in the hole. say I'm going to stuff it in the hole. Come on. Oh, that's a little more stuffed than I meant it to be. I need a little bit bigger piece of wire. Yeah, I'm going to hammer out. I'm right in between gauges again. So I'm going to hammer out a little bit of one end to a taper. Because I don't need much in there. I just need material that is actual silver instead of solder. It's quite thin enough.
Are you using fine silver wire?
Nope, I'm using sterling.
Okay.
My walls are sterling in this case. Oh, come on, little guy. What are we doing for time? 6:20. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm going to leave it with all of its, well, I probably don't need that much extension. That'll be a nightmare to heat, but snip it off with a fair amount of excess. And then we're going to drop it a few times and then we'll pop over and fix it. That's what we're going to do. So you can see I've just got it sort of shoved into this gap just below the surface. I'm going to go back over and hold it in the the third hand and do a little soldering now when it won't be a gap fill solder. It'll be an attach it solder, right? So that what I'm doing is basically building a reinforcement where the hole was, so that when we go back in to grind it down a bit and put the knuckle back in, it has a stable place to attach. And I'm going to be really generous with my solder on this one.
Are you using medium now?
I am, yeah, I'm still on medium. So this is in effect like when you drill down a little bit into your earring to put your earring post in place. Similar style here. I'm shoving it down through the hole and then trying to get it to flow all around the hole so that it really is becoming a part of the piece. But you can see how heavy these hollow forms are, that they take this long to get to temp. Come on, little guy. Slow. All the way around. There we go. Okay, I now have a hollow form lollipop. That's going to cool. I'm going to chop it back off, grind it back so it matches the rest of the material. And then put my spacer in for where it belongs, for what the notch where I want it to set up. And then we're going to try that again. I'm going to pickle these so that they're clean before we do the next round. Again, recovery actions will teach you a whole lot about your practice, right? So I didn't panic. I didn't flip out. Just the usual, oh, stuff happens. And you can get back from it, Now, that's not to say that I don't hit things that make me flip out, because they're unrecoverable. There are things that are unrecoverable. It's just there are far fewer things that are unrecoverable than we fear, I guess is the way I would put it. Don't give up before you have to give up. You know, if it's going to damage the integrity of the piece, if it's going to break the visibility, the visual impact of the piece, sure, pause and reset. If that piece were badly damaged, I'd be making a replacement hollow form for that specific spot in the necklace. And I have done that on other pieces. Man, my first big hollow form piece, I think it was like 13 segments long, and I think I made 20 segments before I was happy with them all. Not including the clasp, which was a whole nother ball of wax. So yeah, take your time with it and make your decisions, but don't give up too early in the process. Questions while we're waiting for that to cool and pickle? So if there are no questions, I want to talk a little bit about the future of the project. Because once this big necklace is done, I have a few options. So I'm thinking that the A Box of Unfinished Things project will end in December, putting it at 2-year mark like we did with the Cogswell project. Mostly because I don't know that I have a sense of whether you guys want to follow along on just sort of random projects as opposed to, you know, like I'm actually moving through a lot of the stuff in my box of unfinished things. I love meeting with you guys, but I also don't want to just spin my wheels, and because frankly, doing a project of this scale is very frustrating for me at slow motion. Like I've had to stretch it out. It's been really a great learning experience for me. So I'm not saying I didn't enjoy the process. It's just that like when I want to get going on something and I'm this close, I want to just get going on it. You know, that's the way it works. So I'm trying to figure out, this is not going to be all the way through to December, or else I will jump off a cliff. This is so close to being done. One of the things that I had promised during the Cogswell series was that I would at least do a step bezel for an unusual cut stone. And I would happily come up with a project around that. Something with angles and curves in it was the basics that people wanted to see. I can also pull out, there's a couple more projects in the box that I could work on. But I wanted to know if there are any specific skills that you were hoping to look at this series that we haven't hit. You know, we've made a clasp, we've done some hollow forms. I was maybe going to do some Kyumbu on screen at one point. Anything else specific?
I don't have anything specific because I learn every time you show us anything and it's appreciated.
Okay.
So I
Good.
love whatever your flow is good by me.
Same here.
Okay.
I love the hollow forms
Okay.
and how you're making your necklace and you're doing different, would it say different tube settings, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in different angles. I've never thought of that before.
Oh, the hinges
one,
going both
yeah.
upright and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
In
Yeah,
one
yeah.
necklace, yeah. So that's
Yeah,
very
I mean,
nice.
so if I didn't, all my necklaces would stand out like they were like an English collar, right? They're so big
Right.
that they would just stick out awkwardly and nobody would want to wear them.
That would
So
be
yeah,
kind of
that's part of
cool.
my jam is, pardon? Well, I mean, there's some great stuff you can do. Then you get into the hollow form and that crinkle technique that Nancy was showing us, you could really make some cool ripples. But it's stylistically, if I'm making something this big and weighty, I want it to rest comfortably on the neck. So yeah, I'm glad that you're seeing in it the elements where you're intentionally designing the directionality of what you're working on. I'm going to switch from spotlight mode for a second, just because I feel like I'm staring at tiny little versions of all of you. Any other things specifically that you were hoping skill-wise we'd hit? Or anything you've seen in my collections that you wonder how I did it? Because some of my in-the-box projects may be able to pick that up.
You've been showing it right now with the hollow forms and the hinges.
Yeah,
right now.
good.
Yeah, for me.
Okay. All right, well, then I'll just keep chipping away and I'll pick what interests me out of the rest of the box. And it may be some, like you'll see a portion of what's happening and not the whole end to end on a given project. And otherwise, I had down do something with the fancy stone and yeah, maybe another piece from the box. Um,
I would love to see that
and
fancy stone one. That would be really cool.
okay, yeah, I know. I think I can't remember who was asking for that specifically, but it was one of the things that wasn't in John's book was talking about how to handle something that has both curves and points beyond the pear shaped. So I wanted to cover that.
Rachel, I'll
And
just say,
then yeah,
say now that you're asking us, I'll
uh-huh.
cogitate. And next time,
Okay,
see,
sure.
see, and I'll, look at your work. And, you know, for me, one of the hardest things is I don't get to my box because my life is not oriented around my jewelry. That's one reason I go and take classes so I can like
Yeah,
go somewhere and focus on that. But
focus. Yeah.
I've loved doing this and loved seeing your work and meeting other people. So, like I say, I'll cogitate and see what maybe we can come
Okay.
up with. So,
And if you're looking for other classes, I've got an in-person clasps class up here in Portland, and it's gorgeous year-round here in Portland, especially if you like heat over rain, then the time that the class is running is even more peak here because it's the hottest time of year here. It's going to be in August 9th and 10th. Um, yeah, I mean, I love teaching you guys. I'm trying to get more actual hands-on classes going, and I'm doing a poor job of it. So that's one of the reasons that I want to sort of wrap in December is to make sure that I'm actually spending time promoting the workshops. But this has been great for me. It's been making me think a lot about my own design methodologies. So yeah, come back to me next time. Our next class, I'm new. I know I'm doing what I usually do at the end, and I'm not trying to wrap with you guys yet. I want to get those hinges in place for you. But the next session that we have will be June 18th. And our July session may have to move because of my travel. Did I have to move it? Nope. July is going to be the 16th. Oh, it was November that I'm going to have to move 1 week forward or back, which means it'll be 1 week forward so we don't hit Thanksgiving week. But otherwise, we're on track for the third week cycles. And I talked to you about adding the bling with the little stones we're gonna do, the hinges and the hinge pins. We will do a session in which we're working on finishing and Kyumbu. Not in that order. We'll do Kyumbu and then finishing. And we will, the next time you see this after this session, there will probably be a lot of it pinned together already. And I'll leave one or two to show you guys.
so
Okay.
I just, if you want to, and I don't have to spend inordinate time, but tube and flush setting.
Okay. Oh, that's one of the things that I'll show a little bit about. I'll show you a cool tube setting technique on the flex shaft when we get to making the stone setting pins. Because part of the reason I want to go this route is that you can do an easy tube set within your flex shaft that makes sure you get a nice balanced setting to it. Flush setting, I will have to think about what project will be best suited to that because I don't currently have anything with flush setting in the list, but I'll put that down on my think about it. I use flush setting periodically.
I struggled with I got 2 millimeter and 1.5 millimeter, but I 1 millimeter escapes me. I don't
1 millimeter it escapes me literally. Like I can't keep them in place. My fingers don't have the dexterity I need for them.
okay. I thought it was
The
just me. I'm
answer
like, I don't know how people do these little tiny
4 millimeters is good.
4 millimeters is not bigger, not too much smaller. But the real fact of it is the answer is always, do you have the right size burrs?
Mhm.
Whether you're doing 1 millimeter or 4 millimeter.
You can blow
And
that
that
away.
should really, pardon?
I say you can blow
What was
that
that?
one away.
Yeah, I have done that. So it's really a little bit about the tools and making sure that you've got decent quality burrs. Um, Deb Karras from CMAG does a nice session on that. I don't know if she's teaching that again. But flush setting is one of those things that you should take from everybody you ever can. Lucy Walker's workshop is great. Like every teacher that ever teaches it, learn what they do and then practice the blend that you come up with from it because your result is going to be a little bit of everybody's.
Also, with the
Yes.
drills, the drill bits that you use for like 1 millimeter and 2 millimeter, you can do little kits for them, and that would help out too. Keep them in like a little
As
tube.
sets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of all the drill
So
bits
the only
that you
thing
need for that.
the only thing I'd warn about on that, Stephanie, is only if you are working with really well calibrated stones, because the smaller the stone, the more likely it is to
size.
be off by just enough to be a pain in the butt.
Right.
The other trick with flush setting is if you are not working with perfectly calibrated stones, which are hard to find,
Mm-hmm.
buy boatloads more than you think you need so that you can switch out a stone if you discover that you've overcut something. That's magic to be able to say, oh, no, I didn't want that blue stone. I wanted the other blue stone. Yeah, that's the one I really wanted.
I've got
Um,
all of these melees. I got all
yeah,
these melees, and then I'm like, so I started practicing, and I was proud of myself getting the 2, and then I was super
yeah,
proud of myself getting the 1.5, even though it took 3 times as long than the 2 millimeter did. But the 1 millimeter, I spent I think 2 days trying to
mm,
do a 1 millimeter, and I just can't do
yeah,
it. And I think that there's now little tiny rubies all over my floor in my garage. Like
yeah.
I lost a whole bunch of them. They're really,
Right.
really tiny.
Yep. I would encourage you to get your drill bits to the point where you get the snap when you put the stone in. So what I would be using with a 1 millimeter is I'd like take a toothpick and break it in half and flatten off one end. And that would be my pusher. So that once I've got the stone lined up with the hole, I can push downward and I should hear that tiny little snap. If you're not hearing the tiny little snap on the little bitty ones, you probably have too big of a hole. Because the closer you can get to it just pops in, the better. So those are my tips. And I'll figure out, I've got to have something that will be blingified well by having some flush sitting on it. So I'll figure that out. Let me check and see how we're doing in the pickle, that we can get this hinge done. We are very well pickled, except that I only managed to put one of them in. So we'll start with that. Clean this one up a little bit. That one's going to be rinsed off. I'm going to show you the rest of the fix on the other half that we're attaching. So you can see I've now got a little plug securely locked. I've got solder flowed all the way around. I can just come in here and snip it off at the solder point. And then my texture that I use repeatedly in my work is a grinding wheel called what is the name of this? Mizzy something set. What the heck is the name of them? Here we go. Mizzy heatless wheels. They are not heatless. Well, they're heatless, but they don't leave the metal heatless because friction is a thing. But I use these textural wheels all the time. And so it's easy for me to put my texture back in when I can find my wheel. There we go. It's hiding from me. Because all I'm doing is regrinding my pattern down over that piece I just put in. And oops, I haven't spotlighted myself. I apologize. Let me go back to spotlit so you can see this. And you would never know that there was a hole there, right? So a little quick cleanup. And then my prep for the line down the channel that I'm making is, if I need to, I'll saw in a little catch line, and then I'll work with my triangle file to keep expanding it, but because I already have some of the notch in there, I don't need to. So I'm going to do that, and then I take my handy dandy little round file.
Can you pull back a little bit?
Oh, sorry, I got in too close, huh? Yep, there we go.
Thank you.
So I did a line down it with the triangle file. Now I'm doing a line down it with the round file. I want to always remember to flip it back and forth. And if, as is the case right now, I have a hinge on the other side while I'm working, I need to make sure I don't squish my hinge. I have been known to do that. And then another thing that you can do as a pass on these is, if you have, oops, that's actually the handle I wanted. If you have a barrel burr, you can run a pass down it with the barrel burr to make a nice even channel. So I'm just using the barrel burr. And just cleaning this up a little bit. And voila, I am back to having a good connection point for my hinge. And in this case, sorry, go
Rachel,
ahead.
a barrel burr, a cross cut burr, or is that different?
No, a barrel burr is literally a straight up and down burr. I highly recommend you get the Bush brand. Am I in the right spot? So it's literally straight up and down. It is a barrel shape.
Okay.
So no taper whatsoever. And they're usually fairly finely toothed. The Bush brand, they do a set of unbelievably good quality burrs. So the cylinder burr is what they call it when it's in the Bush line, but also it's called a barrel. Bush, and that's the barrel burr. And then I also use their flame burr, or also known as a bud burr in some places. And flame burrs are one of those ones that you do want to know about for your flush setting, since we were talking about that. This is like a happy crossbreed between the parts that are done with a round burr and a setting burr or a heart burr. This acts as a little bit of all of them, so it can get a little bit of drill down while also creating that nice round shape. And these might actually be part of your answer to getting a good fit for the tiny stones. But once again, the finishing burrs, or excuse me, flame burrs, also known as bud burrs, are a great one when you get them from Bush. I've gotten crappy ones from other companies. The other purpose of a cylinder burr, oh, my favorite thing. When I make a gold bezel, I will often make it tighter than I meant to. I don't know why in gold I'm not getting the flex that I'm used to in silver. And with a barrel burr, you can take and grind the inside of your wall down. Like, let's pretend that this, oh, here, I have one that can act as my example. So we've got this setting. If I had a little corner that I had too much material in, this is a straight wall that I can run along with the upright burr that doesn't cut away, it doesn't cut the corner, it just cleans down the line. So it's used by a lot of stone setters as sort of a touch-up and finishing cleanup, to get extra solder, to get bumps in the metal, to get a tight fit to become a little bit looser. Yeah, I use them pretty heavily these days. Okay, so we were working on putting on our single setup to this. So I am going to go over and I'm going to put this first one on the bench while the other one is getting set up. And we are seeing my block. We're going to, by God, get one of these done today so that I can show you this and move on next time. So this is one where we do want to use one of the skinnier pieces, and I'm going to just center it in my height, because I know that I've got matching heights and this needs to be in the middle. So in this particular one knuckle instance, I just have to get it soldered in place. I don't have to worry about, you know, are they positioned relative to each other? And now I've added a little bit of a tricky spot because I have that solder point that has the little tube. So I got to be extra, extra quick. In and out on this one. And one of the fun screw ups that you can make when you're doing two directions of hinges is forgetting which way your hinge is being set up. Does it go vertically? Does it go horizontally? In this case, we've got a channel that's going to tell us, and as long as we follow that channel, oh, come on, little thing. Then we should be in good shape. I need to clean up my third hand tweezers. They're getting a little clunky. I also need to clean my torch tip. If you can see this extra orange gleam around the blue, that means that I have got grubbiness in the tip. And one of the ways to do that is a combination of, if you have a sonic cleaner, run it through the sonic cleaner with a fair amount of the solution, and then plunge it with some pipe cleaner, and do that a couple of times until your pipe cleaner no longer comes out dark. You can do that with the Smith torches and the little torches. Although if you've got a knockoff Smith torch, I don't recommend the sonic cleaner part. Come on.
You could do it with acetylene and oxypropane?
Yes, yeah, you're taking the tips off when you do this.
Yeah.
The propane is unlikely to need the clean though, because propane burns pretty cleanly. The oxygen line may need it, but the propane line probably doesn't. Okay, so I've got it soldered in place, but now I need to make sure it is flowed to the point of settling where it needs to be. There we go. That's what I was looking for. All right, so we've got our center point knuckle. And now we're back to where we were before I melted them together. And this time we're going to try and position it this way and see if that gives us better. So before I had positioned it, I was working this way. It was creating this little channel for me that was getting very superheated, and I think that was where I erred. So now we're going to go this way, which means I can get better access to it without quite such a tight fit. Just do something like that. I know it's a tiny little difference, the curved side versus the not curved side, but I think it may be enough to get us there. And I'm going back to using, oops, I'm going to move over to a flatter surface for one. We're going to do our first piece touchdown. Ew, I lied. I'm going to go back over to my bench. I forgot to do the cleanup of this grub from the other side. I did it on the one that we were repairing, but I didn't refile. So once again, we're starting with our triangle file. Just running it down the crevice that I had already created. I'm also going to do a little grinding away because I see a little more solder there than I want, which means we're just going to get in the same spot we were in before, where it flows where it shouldn't. So let's get rid of some of that excess grub. Where's my round file? And finally, a pass with that barrel burr. Just get me a nice straight channel on that. Back to the bench. Okay, flat surface, as flat as it's getting right now. And maybe get rid of the extra blobs of solder. Okay, we're going to do our bottom one first. Please, come on, little guy. I got too much solder on there. Think before our next session, I'm going to do a big cleaning of all my soldering tools because they are behaving very badly. Take 3. There we go.
Maybe we can have a session with you cleaning everything.
Just watch me do studio housework.
Yeah, like we forget like what we need to clean or polish or refurbish or dress or
Clean the
Yeah,
bricks.
most of the brick you wouldn't be able to see because I take it outside. It's just grinding it on a piece of good pavement. You need one of the like the black top is actually the best, but second best is cement, and you just grind it in circles until it wears down, and it just puts off basically a ceramic dust.
okay.
Um, but I have to wait until I've got it clear of solder. I need to use up the solder and not put more down in my piles so that I remember.
Okay.
Come on, little guy. Flow. Tacked down, but you're not flowing. Ugh, and now I'm getting to the too hot for the upper level. So I gotta be careful. Mm, come on. There we go. Just didn't want to get that heat underneath. That's making me happier. Okay, so that's one. And I'm gonna actually this time try doing the upside down thing. Since these are the same height, I should be able to position top and bottom. It's bumpy on this log, I mean on this block here, so it's a little awkward. But so I should be able to make a little bit easier positioning just by aligning with what I already have up above, instead of making it sit on top of something. The only problem is the back side of this is lumpy because of the reticulation silver. So I'm going to just support it and see if I like that. I do not like that. It needs to be a little taller than it is. I'm going to give up on that upside down option. Go back to the way we were doing it. Now I'm super grubby right where this piece needs to be. So I'm just trying to get a little cleanup with my flux, which will sometimes help do trick. Make sure we're lined up. And yeah, coming in from this direction is a lot more open, so I'm less worried about that whole soldering the wrong end together. So knock on wood, we'll see how this runs for us. Again, I'm strongly advising against using easy solder for this hinge because we still have to put our hinge pin on. And we may need it for that. So once again, my risks here are the hinge pins flowing like they did the first time, the reticulation silver oozing, as it really wants to do. So as soon as I have it tacked down, being able to just shift it a little further away from the other pin is a good thing. And if I can get this little bit of solder to flow better, that makes me much happier. Get some excess solder off of there. All right, boom. We now have our top and our bottom hinge points relative to our middle hinge point. And you can, if you've got a steady hand, this manual way of lining them up may be perfect for you. If you don't, absolutely do not hesitate to go get those pencil leads, to get whiteout, to get yellow ochre, to find a position. Like maybe it would be easier for you if you did it this way instead, right? And you set them up along their wall and you put third hands on each of them. Just always be conscious of there's not just one way to achieve the same ends. And what works for me may not always work for you.
So Rachel, can I just
mhm.
ask, when the piece on your left has the center hinge on, the center knuckle, is that right?
Yep.
Piece on the
Yep.
right has the other two. And when you were doing that, did you have the center knuckle actually contacting the other piece, or was it just
Yes.
close? Okay, it wasn't just visually.
Yes, but let me go to my bench and draw the way that it's laid out, since since it's hard for you guys to see the close up on this one, because this isn't, it's not touching the back wall. If I don't knock my camera over.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Because
it's not touching the back wall. It's inset enough to stabilize, basically. So that's, and this is true no matter which technique you're using. You don't want them fully set in, right? You got You got one knuckle, you got another knuckle. And what we're doing is offsetting just enough to help support. This is going to be actually, this is a terrible drawing. Okay, so we were working our bottom hinge and our upper hinge on that last pass, right? I mean, our bottom knuckle and our upper knuckle. And so this is my wall of one of this pieces. The hollow form goes off this way. And then I put the other piece, the other knuckle, offset like that. So it was just enough to create the stack and the height relationship while this one's connected over here. And the reason we put it part way in, you have to put pretty close to halfway in order to get this, because otherwise this one wants to angle this way, right? But the reason we do that is to know that our proportions are stacked well. Meaning that once I clean these up, these will slide neatly together.
Right.
Right. And now if worse comes to worse and this one bumps down a little bit, that's okay. You're just going to file a little bit off of one of your knuckles, right? Now, if you get the other direction and you end up with a huge gap, and so you end up more like this by the time you're done with a gap here, you may want to redo it because any gapping here leads to instability in the tension on the hinge,
Good to know.
right?
So that's why when you're lining it up, you really want to have them super close. You're making sure that you're
Yeah.
filling that gap.
Yep. And I'll tell you guys the truth. There are times when I don't actually do the positioning relative to each other. I just have a good sense of scale. And so I'll work this in my third hand if it's really giving me grief. And if this one, I err a little bit on the side of too tight because I know I can file away.
And we can tell you've done this about 50,000 times.
Well, this week alone, I would say, or this last 2 weeks, trying to get these projects done. But there's like, if you could see my hinges on the, I am embarrassed by a couple of the hinges, gang, on the big hollow form piece. There's a couple that I'm going to have to redo once we're past the show because they embarrass me.
I have one other
But
question
yes,
too.
practice. Say
Um,
again.
I have one other question too. I noticed that when you were going in and soldering things, like I usually put like some sort of barrier flux, but I didn't see you do that.
Good call out. So I use Prips Flux only when I know I'm going to be heating a whole piece regularly over and over again. I never grew up doing the borax and alcohol as a regular thing. And frankly, I have taught in too many studios where there's no way in hell I would put a material that flammable sitting on the bench with the students there that are going to knock it over and not realize because you can't see the flame that it's been set on fire. So I just avoided using the alcohol borax combo. I do use it like that was one of the things we were talking about, maybe finishing like if I'm doing a giant bracelet or a box, if I'm doing a box, you bet I'm Prips fluxing every time. But what you see me using is actually paste flux, especially for hollow forms. Paste flux is phenomenal. It's my go-to for most things. I do not ever do a full dip. When I first started learning metalsmithing, they taught that. And I have long since moved away from it because there's many, many people who agree that you only need it where you want it. I've already given in one of the other sessions of the series a spiel about that whole idea that where the flux is where the solder goes, because that's only kind of true. It's really where the clean is, the solder is more likely to stick. So by creating a little space where you're putting your flux, you're giving that more chance to avoid oxidation just long enough for the solder to flow where you want it. Solder will still flow wherever the heat is. Solder follows the heat. I don't care if you've got a patch of flux here and nothing for the next 5 miles. If 4 miles over, you've heated more than you did where your flux is, your solder is heading for that spot, right? So the flux action is the different types of flux can both help deoxidize and help avoid fire scale. but they can also do things like act as a glue. So what you did see me doing was dipping pieces occasionally in the paste flux, which a barrier flux, the Prips won't act as a glue. I dip it in and I use it while it's on something hot as a glue down. Or when I'm doing hollow forms, again, I showed this when I did hollow forms a few sessions back. When you're doing your final capping off, the paste flux can act as like a marker point. So you put your hollow form top down, flux, heat until it goes white crispy. Then you lift the top off and you can see the outline of where you need to put your solder bits so they don't go floating around in underneath the thing, right? So I use both types. I hate the green glowy flux, the yellowy green stuff. I find no use whatsoever in it. I'm told that it's better for gold work. I haven't found it to be so. And if I weren't afraid of having a constant bowl of borax and alcohol on my bench, I would probably use that more on my large pieces. As it stands, a lot of my texture work and so on I don't do a lot of high polish work. John Cogswell taught me early on that silver does not want to ever stay in high polish. Its natural state is a satin finish. Why not embrace that? You know, it's going to be less frustrating for the consumer. And so it shows less fire stain, it shows less fingerprinting, it doesn't acid etch as easily with people's finger oils and things like that. So the flux that I use sort of reflects that and how I use it. The other
So-
thing that I haven't, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so you use Handy and Prips. Those are your two
Is
main.
it Handy brand? I think I'm using either, I think I'm using Knox. What am I using?
Or Dandy?
I use Griff Flux, Griff Flux, but Handy Flux is pretty close to the same thing.
Okay.
So it's just a paste, and I like mine fairly sort of watered down applesauce consistency. I don't like it super runny. Well, there's something else I was going to say about fluxes. Oh, that's the other thing. John said this to me at one point, and I was curious. I don't know whether it's a proven fact. This is one of those ones that I understand why he thought it, but I don't know whether science backs it up. He said, look, when you're putting a flux down on something, you are literally putting a water-based product on your metal. Water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. And so therefore, by putting a water-based product, when you're burning it off, you are adding oxygen to your situation. So you're both cleaning and dirtying at the same time with the flux. And that's why he doesn't do a full dip in a water-based flux. If he's going to do a full dip, which he did often for his chalices and his large-scale work, he was doing the religious use of the borax and alcohol mixture on the large scale. But he's also taking double torches with like rosebuds and stuff to get that kind of scale up to heat. So he absolutely needed it. When he does boxes, he does a full dip every time, no matter what. If you're putting the torch on it, it goes in a full double. It's actually a double dip. You do a borax and alcohol mixed dip, heat it till it goes to the white powdery, dip it again, not while it's hot, and then heat it again. The first one burns off the first pass of oils. The second one coats any places where the oils were getting in the way of blocking it. So before he goes full on torch, it's that double dip cycle. It's always weird to know what tense to talk about John in. So bear with me while I switch between past and present tense as if he's still here, because I sometimes feel like he is.
Yes.
So that was a ramble about flux. Let me see if these have cooled off and we can look at our newly created hinge.
So how do you deal with fire scale if you don't flux the whole thing? I mean, not flux,
You
but
don't heat it so much that it gets to fire scale stage if you can help it as your first pass. And sometimes you sand the heck out of it. And in my case, I do a lot of texturing. There's, again, a lot of reason why I like texture in my work. Let's see how we're doing. Bring you over to the right camera. And all right, so less the flux leftovers. We actually have a really good fit on this one. I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. This is what we just built. So we got good connection. Once it's defluxed, the crunchiness of the fit together will do well. and generally we're in good shape. Now, there's some troubleshooting things, 7:10. Yeah, we're going to go into some of the troubleshooting things next time because I don't want to keep you guys much longer. But there's recovery things even in this. For example, if I had managed to set one a little bit askew, if I'd lifted one of them up more than straight lined it, I can take a pair of pliers and gently, reposition it a little tiny bit while it's in place. In fact, it's not a bad thing to try and manipulate it that way, because you will discover pretty quickly if your solder join wasn't good enough. And you want to discover that before you're putting your last pin in place, right? So this is a fairly good set. We didn't get to do the other directional set.
For that,
It's
what
actually,
gauge wire would you have going in there?
the answer is whatever gauge wire is absolutely barely shoved in there, hard to get in, because as soon as you add air gap between them, you add torque. Right? So
Right.
in my case, that's part of why I haven't figured out how I'm going to do the tube-based toppers, because I'm right between a 13 gauge and a 12 gauge on this stupid tube that I got.
Okay.
So my choice is either drill it out a little bit or use a tube, then use a wire and then draw it down a little bit to a half size.
Okay.
Are you
So,
gonna show how you do the pin part? Have you
yes, but next time.
Next
Next
time,
time.
okay.
Yeah. So we will what I'm going to do is a boatload of them on my own between now and then I'll make sure to save at least one of the uprights and one of the horizontals for you guys, so that you can see them in action. And then we'll do the final, how am I going to connect the little guy? Because I can't decide my final connection point of the little one to our big stone bezel until I see how it rests around here and find out whether I need more flex here or I might need lock it in place so that the necklace stays where I want the stone resting, right? And until I've got all the rest of it connected, I can't figure out that final connection. And then we'll do the demo on the stone-topped bezels. And the delight is that because I'm choosing sapphires, and there's a reason I chose sapphires, I can do them preset and then do any heat work I need to close my pin off, right? Because sapphires can take the heat, diamonds can take the heat, as long as they haven't had special treatments or fracture fills or anything like that. So that'll be what we'll cover next session, and then the session after that, we'll figure out what we're moving on to. Or we may actually, with that, we may actually still have some A.B.o.U.T demoing to do on this piece if I decide to go that route. But I will know that more once the pieces are together. Any last questions?
I wanted to mention when you were talking about, trying to finish a piece or not finish it. And I know how difficult it is when you're in the moment, in the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And because you've been doing this with us for a long time, I personally don't mind if you finish it and then, move on to the next one because you've been working on that for a while. I know you want to finish it. And once you're out of that flow, it's hard to get back in it.
Which is why the hinges, like when you're coming and going from hinges, it's definitely, so I will do hinges until I get 2 bad hinges, and then it's time to stop for the day. That's my baseline. And I appreciate that sentiment, but this one really has been a great learning project. Like, it has all the things and we keep adding more things. So it's actually a really great exercise of both slowing my brain down to think about it, because this would be a very different design if I had just run right through it. Right? Like the hollow form piece, that went from a design on paper to I'm making all the pieces to, oh, I have to do minor tweaks and that's it. Right? That's a different method of designing than what we're working on in this one. So the act of slowing down and rethinking and sidetracking onto design possibilities, so that is actually a very good one for me as an exercise. I'm learning as much from it as you guys are, hopefully. So thank you. But yeah, I'm going to get big chunks of the repeatable pieces done between now and then is my expectation, depending on my crazy schedule right now. And then I just don't want you to miss any of the individual components of it entirely. And we'll go from there.
When I
Okay,
have
I think I
time,
have
I'm gonna
rambled enough.
challenge myself.
Good. Yeah. What I would love to see more from you guys is I miss the early days of this when we were actually pulling out challenges that you had and asking the team to give you ideas because everybody has such great ideas. And also, I would like to see some finished products. I would like to see some things you've done, even if they're not from the box, even if it's just a new design, because that gets me super stoked. And I love seeing the different techniques you're all learning. So, okay, gang. Until next time, which I think I said already was the 18th of June. Because holy cow, it's midsummer already, practically.
Thank
Not
you.
in Chicago.
Thank-
It's cold in Chicago.
Oh, all right. Well, I hope it warms up for you. See you all in a
Bye,
month.
everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.